All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. A little Wednesday morning action. Yes, it's a recorded one. It's not a live one. I'm very, very excited to have a good guest of the show, somebody that's always been very kind with his time. Want to welcome in Mark Medina, covers the Lakers in the NBA. What's going on, Mark? How are you?
Alan, I'm ecstatic. Anytime I get a chance to join your show, talk Lakers NBA, means it's a good day.
That's what I'm talking about, Mark. That's what I'm talking about. Well, I appreciate you being here. Um, Man, it's kind of crazy here. Draft is coming up. Next thing we know, we're in the free agency. So there's it's kind of it's a fun time of the year. I think for some people, when you think in other sports, once you get to the offseason, it's going to slow down. Things kind of just are just getting going in the NBA. So should be fun. By the way, do you have the same anticipation that it's going to be a lot of movement, like a lot of other people have mentioned?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I was also going to say there's also this thing called the NBA Finals going on with the potential
I'm
closeout game,
watching.
Oklahoma City Thunder, Indiana Pacers. I know some people aren't watching, you're watching, but it's been good basketball. But yeah, to your broader point, I expect a lot to happen. I think the fascinating part is on one hand, Rob Pelinka was projecting at the end of his end of season X interview that there's going to be a lot of movement, but we also don't know how the domino pieces are going to fall and if the major domino pieces are going to fall with Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo. But should be fun. This is what the NBA offseason is all about.
Yeah, it's so funny. From a content perspective, there are times at this time of the year where I'm like, yeah, nobody's going to really care about that, but it's free agency related and everybody cares about it. It's like it is kind of funny how the hype game changes once you get closer to free agency. You hit on the NBA finals, so just give everybody an idea what we're going to do. So in today's episode, just going to be Mark and I. We'll be obviously shooting the you know what. Want to hit on the NBA, definitely want to hit on the NBA finals. You mentioned Giannis and KD. Would love to kind of get your thoughts on those two players. And then certainly got a lot of Laker questions that I could get to. Let's start with this. What's been a little bit of your initial read in the NBA finals? Like you mentioned, Thunder up 3-2, one game away from winning an NBA championship, capping off a 68 win season. You know how young they are. What's been your thoughts so far in the finals?
Well, there's been a lot of them. I think one, the basketball has been great, even though it's two small market teams. Wouldn't have the kind of draw if the Lakers were in the finals or the Golden State Warriors for obvious reasons, historical equity, LeBron James, Steph Curry. It's still been great basketball. Obviously, it's been a game changer entering game six after we saw Tyrese Haliburton have the injury he had with his right calf. And so, as we know, right calf injuries are nothing to play with. And so on one hand, you think, okay, he is going to play because it's an NBA Finals game,
Yep.
it's a closeout game. Rick Carlisle and Tyrese Haliburton said publicly he expects to play, but we also know that calf injuries can lead to Achilles injuries, et cetera. So, going to be fascinating. It seems clearly the Thunder are in the driver's seat, but up until Game Five, while I did think that the Thunder were still going to win the series, Indiana's shown that they hadn't just gotten to this point because the Knicks underachieved or the Celtics underachieved.
Mm.
They've really made the most of this roster with Tyrese Haliburton growing, as well as really tapping into the depth and teamwork that make the Pacers a great team.
Yeah, I saw this morning. Carlisle, I guess, had mentioned that Tyrese Haliburton will be a game time decision for Game 6. So clearly, listen, if they're gonna live to see another day, they got to have Tyrese Haliburton. What did you make? I thought it was interesting yesterday from a lot of the media that I was consuming, or even on actual game day. Did you feel like too much criticism towards Tyrese Haliburton after Game 5, or do you feel like it was justified? Just my own personal opinion. I thought the guy was trying to gut it out. Clearly, he wasn't
Yeah.
100%. I felt like everyone jumping all over him. It's like, well, isn't this kind of what you want to see from your start? At least he's doing everything he can to stay on the court. Do you agree with that, or do you agree with a lot of others that were like, you should have pulled him?
Well, I think there's a few things to unpack here. I wrote this for Athlon Sports. He was in a lose-lose situation. I mean,
Mm,
Tyrese Haliburton, yeah, he didn't play a good game. He was scoreless as far as hitting any shots, committed three turnovers, including two in the fourth quarter, but he tried, and that's what you want in an athlete. Now, there is fair criticism. Should Rick Carlisle have pulled him earlier or gone with TJ McConnell, especially after how strong he played in the third quarter. But as it pertains to Tyrese Haliburton specifically, I don't think that he should be piled on for trying to play in game five. Clearly, his limitations had mostly to do with his injury and the injury alone. Now, when you look at the big picture of things, does he deserve criticism? Yes. Any player that doesn't have a good game deserves criticism. I think what you've found before his injury were three different versions of Tyrese Haliburton. You would
Hmm.
see the clutch version of Tyrese hitting 4 game winners, really showing composure in crunch time. You would see the passing Tyrese Haliburton, where he's the best passing point guard in the NBA, very consistent on that front. But then the third version is those times where he's not aggressive enough, not
Hmm.
getting a lot of shots. He's always going to be a pass first player, but you still need to be a scoring threat. And when I've talked to people around the league about what do they make of that, they chalk it up to he's 25 years old.
Hmm.
There's room for him to get better, uh, where he's not the finished product. And where he's at right now, I would say he's a star player, not a superstar. That's okay. He's 25 years old. He's just starting. This is his first prolonged postseason appearance. Yes, he's had postseason experience last year, but this is really the pinnacle of it with getting to the finals. So criticism is all deserved, but I think the challenge is how you put it all in context.
Yeah, it's funny because I think if he didn't play, then everybody's going to say, this guy really even care? I mean, is he
Yeah.
there for his teammates? And then if he does play, well, why is he playing? I mean, if he's not 100% healthy, you can't win. I'm a fan of, and I like the way you broke it down because I do think there are layers to kind of what Tyrese's game can be on a night in, night out basis. But man, what an easy guy to root for through this postseason. And the Indiana story has been fun to watch as well. But maybe I'm defending Tyrese because I love what he's done, obviously through this playoff series. Quick question on the Thunder. What does it say if hypothetically we're sitting here, and I guess it doesn't matter whether it goes 6 or it goes 7, if the Thunder win an NBA championship, however they get there, what's I don't know if message is the right word, but when you're this young and you're supposed to be this inexperienced and you're supposed to go, towards a trajectory where it's like, all right, they'll win a championship, but there's a map to get there. They get there this quick. What does it say about the Oklahoma City Thunder and what we could be watching over the next couple of years?
Yeah, what it says about the Oklahoma City Thunder is they're very well run. Obviously, Sam Presti is one of the best general managers in the league for a reason. Knows how to not only identify talent, draft talent, acquire talent, and then their player development program is very robust. Now, at this point, how did they get here? Even though they're so-called young, I mean, they've had a lot of collective experience. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is a star player. He sets the tone, but they've done a masterful job with improving from within, drafting guys like Jalen Williams, who's now become a two-way player, Lou Dort, who's become one of the most physical and consistent defenders in the NBA. I think, full disclosure, he got away with some pushes
Mm-hmm.
against Tyrese Haliburton in game four, but he is a great defender, very physical, studies the scouting report, and they play just really well as a team. Mark Dagnall, I know he's gotten criticism during this finals run of why did you go away with your big lineup starting with Case and Wallace? Yes, that didn't go out as planned, but I think that's a little bit more in the weeds. Big picture, he is very good at maximizing the talent around him. They really trust his decision making and just how he fits the puzzle pieces together. So they're very well run. Even though in today's NBA it's hard to repeat, there hasn't been a repeat champion since the Golden State Warriors in 27-18. I would think the Thunder are the favorites to repeat, and they're able to do this in the short window because they don't have to make decisions, I believe, until 2 years from now for
Mm.
when Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams have to then start negotiating new deals. So they're going to enter the challenges that other teams have entered in today's NBA with second apron concerns, et cetera. But right now, their core are all locked into rookie-friendly contracts that right now it's all about just maximizing that window as best as they can.
Mark, it's funny because I never understood this. I used to, when I was doing the pregame show and I was doing it with Michael Thompson, and every time Lakers were going to play the Thunder, we'd have a conversation, and it was kind of, we were trying to figure out how the NBA wants to, they're going to have 7 different champions in 7 different years. There's, obviously multiple teams that have a shot to win. And I think they're accomplishing that goal. But isn't it kind of interesting how it feels like the Oklahoma City Thunder, by drafting so well and developing so well and making the move to go get Shea, they're almost going to get hurt by a system that's supposed to not benefit them but reward them for doing the things that they did, and as far as how they built their championship roster. Is it kind of funny that that's kind of the case with the Oklahoma City? I never really fully understood how that makes any sense, where a roster and a team that was constructed based on the system you wanted them to be constructed by.
I agree. I agree. This current system right now, it has enabled a lot of parity, but not sustained parity.
Mm.
I mean, the fact that the Denver Nuggets are 2 years removed from winning a championship, and their core obviously is still intact with Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, but their supporting cast looks completely different. I think that, not to get lawyerly, but generally there are a lot of layers to how they look at the CBA. But generally, I think that there needs to be a distinction of the money allowed to spend on retaining players you drafted
Mm.
versus players that you spend in free agency.
100%.
Now in the Denver Nuggets case, in fairness, some of the players that they had to let go that were very key supporting cast members, you're thinking of guys like Contavious Caldwell Pope, Bruce Bowen. They didn't draft those players, so that those are free agent type moves. But Nikola Jokic,
Which
Jamal
which
Murray.
which I would say, Mark, then is fair, right? Like that I think is fair game. Where Denver, hey, you got a championship out of it, unbelievable, but your model wasn't probably something that was going to be sustainable based on what you're saying. Where obviously with the Thunder, these are guys that they drafted, or most of the guys they drafted.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, here's the thing, though, that is tied together is that the salary cap's the salary cap. So I think that there needs to be a distinguished almost salary cap between incumbent players versus free agency, even though they've been able to have the means and the obvious priority in keeping players like Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. It still counts against the cap. So they
Sure,
still have
sure.
to manage that accordingly. But I think the bottom line is the NBA is trying to create more pressure that if you want to succeed in today's NBA, you have to know how to draft well. You have to know how to develop your players once you're in that organization, as opposed to throwing money at free agents all the time.
Mm.
Obviously, there's more conversations even in today's climate with big, small markets, all that. But I think the bigger message that the NBA is trying to send is if you want to succeed in today's climate, you really have to invest on knowing how to evaluate players coming out of the draft and then knowing how to make the most of their potential and their game with their player development programs.
Based off of that, let me lob kind of a Laker tie to this one. Based off of everything that you just said, how do you feel about the Lakers in that specific category of what seems to be a huge? If you're successful in your drafting and developing, there's a good chance that you probably are going to be a good NBA team in some regards. How do you feel like the Lakers do in that category?
You know what? I think ironically, the Lakers do really well in that category. That is one of the things that Jeannie Buss, I remember talking to her 2 years ago, has been felt a real strong sense of pride in. They draft really well. They do develop players pretty well. I think the challenge has been retaining those young players.
Mm.
Now, some of that has had to do with the Lakers' own priorities. As you know, Alan, and everyone in the audience knows, the Lakers are about getting superstar type players because it helps accelerate their pursuit of winning NBA championships. So when you're looking at that young core a little bit back in the day with D'Angelo Russell and Jordan Clarkson, Larry Nance, Brandon Ingram, all young talent, for different reasons didn't retain them because it was all about using those chips toward getting, star players with LeBron James and then Anthony Davis. But I think, moving forward, it's also created some challenges where the Lakers have tried to weigh their financial component. Think of someone like Alex Caruso.
Yep.
Obviously, he's played really well at the Thunder. they had the means to retain him, but they made the calculation that because of the star power that they had with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and then getting Russell Westbrook, that was enough to still compete. The other thing is at the time, they were really bullish on trying to see what Talen Horton Tucker could be as a young
Mm,
player. That hadn't panned out. So that's another challenging thing that they're going to have to weigh, obviously, with Austin Reaves. But in my mind, it's a no brainer. There might be a fair debate about, okay, where do you draw the line in the sand if you want to prioritize getting a center and fulfilling those needs, because that helps open up the championship window for Luka Doncic and LeBron James. But Austin Reaves, winning player, homegrown talent, and from just getting him on the books, it shouldn't be any thought about whether you extend him or not once he's eligible, I think in early July, because the worst case that you don't want to have happened is that he decides to opt out as a
sure.
play, with his player option, and then he's a free agent next summer,
Mm.
and then he remembers how the Lakers handled them, and all of a sudden he's going to have a lot of bidders that can sign him without having to negotiate a trade.
It's interesting. Most of the offseason, and as I'm doing a show basically on a daily basis, my vibe that I'm getting from Laker fans, and you could tell me what your vibe is in regards to Austin Reaves. There is a lot more people. Maybe they're just louder because usually that's what it is when you got something to complain about or whatever the case is. It seems like there's just so many Laker fans that are saying, "Yeah, guys, Reeves isn't going to work here. You can't have a backcourt with Luka. What does that team look defensively? Um, eh, can you use him for some type of trade bait to take care of other things that you need?" Are you surprised that's been, I think, one of the top storylines all summer so far? It's kind of been about Austin Reeves. Or do you think that that's not a surprise? You understand where some of that conversation's coming from?
It's not a surprise at all. I mean, there's a lot of layers to this. One, I think Austin Reeves has played really well with Luka Doncic. He's taken his game to another level as far as his consistency and potential as a two-way player. But to his own admission, he didn't play well in the playoffs up to his standards. I think the second thing is it's not so much about Austin Reeves, the player, but also the Lakers' other priorities and needs. Rob Pelinka has made it clear, and Laker fans have already known this, that their biggest need is upgrading at the center position because they took a short-term hit when they traded Anthony Davis to get Luka
Mhm.
Doncic. Now, in the big picture, I would argue, and I think you've argued, it was a good thing they got Luka, but obviously it came at a short-term cost and not having AD's rim protection, just having a fortified front court. And so I think that's more of the thing that has added another layer to the debate. Um, if the Lakers are going to make those upgrades, Austin Reeves is the most eligible player to do that because of how great of a player he is. I think the other challenging part, though, is because he's not paid as a star player yet, it might not be enough
Mm.
to make a deal work just from making the numbers equal. So I think that's the extra layer. If the Lakers didn't have the situation where they clearly needed to upgrade their center spot to fortify their defense, to give Luka Doncic a lob threat and really be a more complete roster, I don't think it would be as complicated and as vocal
Mm.
regarding Austin Reeves. But because of that extra layer, and what it means, it becomes that much more complicated and yields a lot of passionate debate that we're still discussing.
When the dust settles, do you think he's a Laker for the next couple of years, or do you think that that's a fair question mark until we kind of figure out what this roster looks like? Would you lean one way or the other?
Alan, I wish I could lean one way or the
Can,
other, but I feel
can I
like,
tell you something, Mark? That's interesting
yeah,
because I think I would lean towards I think he's going to be here.
yeah.
And,
I,
and
I
and the fact that like you have the question mark there, that's interesting because that makes me think, you know what, maybe that's interesting that you think if he's not there in let's say a year or so, something like that, that doesn't sound like that would be a huge shock to you.
yeah, I mean, this is just my own feeling. It's not any signals from
Sure,
anyone.
sure,
It's
sure,
just,
sure.
it's just, it's just knowing the landscape that even
Mm,
though I think it was telling to Rob Pelinka was talking about Austin Reaves in the same vein with Luka and LeBron of
100%.
being this trio and giving him some grace for his playoff shortcomings. I think it really has more to do with how the market plays out this summer.
Hmm.
And so the other thing that's complicated is there's no clear-cut center candidates that's realistic. I mean, we've gone down the list, and I know that you've gone down the list with other player or other people as
I've
well.
I've
I
never
mean,
known so much about backup
Nick
centers,
Claxton and Clint
and yeah,
Capella
I've
and
never
Miles
known so
Turner.
much about them.
Hey, we can take Steven Adams off the board, but when you're
Got
looking
one down.
at, yeah, you're looking at Nick Claxton, and
Hmm.
he's going to have to be acquired via trade. Austin Reeves seems like the most notable candidate. Now, the other candidate would be Rui Hachimura, but they're also very bullish on him because he's really grown as a wing defender. He can still be more consistent, but his perimeter threat as a defender, his athleticism, his 3-point shot, it's all trending in the right direction. So that's where this gets all complicated here. So here's how I would answer this. If Austin Reeves is still on the roster by the time he's eligible for an extension,
Hmm.
which is only shortly into free agency. I think I'm looking at the date here. It's July 6th. They'll sign him to an extension. But we have to keep in mind in today's NBA, extensions don't mean anything.
Sure.
Players might commit to an extension and say, you know what, I want to be traded. Think Damian Lillard is the most notable example, but the organizations do the same thing. But I think if he's still on the roster by the time he's eligible, you negotiate that deal now and deal with everything else later, because you don't want to lose him the following summer for nothing because he is a very good player.
Shout out to Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm. I've spent a little bit of time talking about my story with Brad Wallace, but I'll just kind of keep this simple. They are injury attorneys. They represent anybody in the state of California, and I highly, highly recommend, if you're ever in a situation, a wrongful death case, something happens at work, something happens in your car, please do yourself a favor and go to this website that we got here, wallacewins.com/Sliwa, wallacewins.com/Sliwa. They could help anybody in the state of California. You get a free consultation. I could tell you that in regards to injury attorneys, they are the best in the business. I've known Brad Wallace here for about 5 years. I can make a personal introduction if that, certainly if that helps. I hope you guys never need him. I hope you guys never need an injury attorney. But if you're ever in a predicament or a situation, he's the best in the business. So Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm. Also, they're proud to support the channel. They're big Laker fans. They are definitely a group of individuals based in LA that's got complete support of the channel. Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm, wallacewins.com/Sliwa, wallacewins.com/Sliwa. Now back to the content. Let's say, Mark, let me play a hypothetical here. Let's say Lakers keep Austin Reaves. They're able to make a trade kind of similar to a package they made for Mark Williams, where you're giving up Dalton Connect, you're giving up a first rounder, and then give me maybe another one of these expiring contracts in a deal. Let's say Lakers are able to address, they don't have the best big men, but they got a big man, that the roster is a little bit more complete in the offseason based off what they do, but they keep Austin Reaves. What is that team in the West? Do we know? And I think as we're looking at the Western Conference, maybe as we get through free agency, obviously the picture will be a little bit more clear. Where did Durant go? Did the Rockets get better? What did the Warriors do? There's a lot of questions left in the West. But just based on some of the changes that I mentioned and this glaring need for a big, if they address a couple of things, do you have a little bit of an idea how far do you think a team like that can go?
Yeah. Let me start off here. Barring Giannis Antetokounmpo or Kevin Durant getting on a Western Conference contending team, I think regardless of what the Lakers do, the landscape's going to be the same, with the Thunder being the predominant favorite because they presumably will win the championship. They'll have their main core intact. But I think if the Lakers are able to, make some relatively decent upgrades. They're one of the teams that are in the mix. I wouldn't put them as favorites, but you have Luka, who's going to have another year. He's going to be in better shape. And he's going to even have more time to iron out chemistry. But I think the bigger thing is, as we saw in the playoffs, they really needed to have front court depth and a defensive identity. And as long as they have a respectable identity with that, you're not. I wouldn't put them as a co-favorite to challenge Oklahoma City, but they're in the mix. And you know what? In the NBA, outside of the Golden State Warriors dynasty run, that's usually how it is. So that would be fine. And I think the other thing, I know a lot has been made about Luka and his conditioning. He wasn't Usain Bolt, but I don't have a lot of concerns about what I've seen from Luka during his first time with the Lakers post trade deadline. I was a lot more encouraged than discouraged because I didn't feel that there was any turf or chemistry issues with LeBron James and Luka Doncic. I think the fit was very natural. I think that after getting over the initial shock and disappointment and hurt with Dallas trading Luka to any team, I think he's embraced being part of the Lakers. He's obviously very well astute on what it means to be with this organization and the opportunity he has to win championships here. So yes, he needs to and will improve his conditioning. But I think when you keep in mind that it's also coming in the context of dealing with his calf injury and having some of the baggage, figuratively and literally, from past seasons, he's going to rectify this in the offseason. I think that he's going to use this as an opportunity to take his game to a higher level.
Let me. It's almost like you have my notes in front of you. Every time I was like ready to go to Reaves, you went, and I was ready to go to Luka, and you went there too. All right, you're driving this thing. Um, you know, I wanted to ask you about Luka, and I think you answered most of that question there. But I guess here's what I would ask you: you've got a chance to watch Luka over the first X amount of years in his career. And he's just been unbelievable. He's been phenomenal. Everybody has said top 3 player in the top 5, wherever you want to put him. He's obviously superstar. What's Luka in superstar status walking into his prime? What's that potential? Also having a Los Angeles Lakers jersey on. It feels like in Laker history, Luka Doncic is going to write some type of chapter in Lakers history. I don't know what it's going to be, and I don't know how successful it will be, but doesn't it just feel like those two brands linking up this early in his career just seems like there's going to be a lot of pressure for success, but he's also the kind of player that I don't think he shies away from the pressure.
I don't think he shies away from the pressure at all. Obviously, he's a competitor. He's a great scorer. When you look at some of the weaknesses in his game of being ISO heavy, not always passing the ball, yes, he can improve in that. But I think that that's going to be an ongoing improvement.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with just his training, his dieting. What I'm getting at is I think that he's going to adjust his game and adapt as he gets older because he's a competitor and he wants to win. And a lot of times he was working in a position of strength of leaning in on the 1% qualities that make him a top player. And then he didn't have to worry about some of his weaknesses as much because he was still young and he's also still developing. So I think that he's going to use this opportunity to really relish mitigating his weaknesses and becoming an even more complete player. I think, in fairness, when he was with Dallas, he was showing improvement with that. He was trusting his teammates more
Hmm.
as the Mavericks were upgrading their roster. The fact that he and Kyrie Irving coexisted so well, I think,
Sure.
was a very good sign for how he would be with LeBron James. That it wasn't about him having the ball all the time, and he's very deferential to veteran players, not only with their locker room voice, but the respect that he has on the court. So, yes, he does tap into some of his natural instincts, both for better and for worse. But I think that he's going to continue to address some of those shortcomings so that he's an even more dominant player. And, a lot of times in the NBA, the older you get, you have to do those things because you can't rely on talent alone. But we have to keep in mind,
Sure.
he's still in his prime too. It's not like he's a player in his early
26.
mid 30s yet. So he's just getting started with all that.
it's the two things that I would say I'd love to see from Luka Doncic moving forward as a Laker. Um, I do think that he can probably be in much better shape than he was. Let's see what that looks like. And then the only other thing that I would complain about as a Laker fan or just somebody watching Luka Doncic, complaining to the referees. Just those two areas of his game. I know they're part of his game. And I know the winning kind of shuts all that other stuff up, but he is going to need a team surrounded around him like he had when he was in Dallas to really truly get the Luka Doncic that the Lakers probably envision, everybody envisions. Um, can I okay, help me put these pieces together because I've had these conversations and I've brought this up before. I think everybody's expecting LeBron. Okay, yeah, he's going to play this upcoming season. We're not 100% sure. Does he rip up this current deal, sign another 1+1? How much longer is LeBron going to go? My question to you would be, can you truly churn that chapter and this is the Luka era? Can that happen while LeBron's still here, or is that fully then embraced once LeBron decides, all right, guys, I'm done playing the game of basketball. Now the not just the keys, but like the entire organization is circling around what Luka needs. Can those coexist, or that really happens once LeBron's gone?
It can coexist, but it's I think it's the analogy of, running the relay race. Both players are in the race, and how do you pass the baton? I think in the very short term, the way that it's been clear that this is Luka's team moving forward is the fact that he's been running the offense.
Mm,
The fact that the Lakers have made decisions more about keeping Luka in mind versus LeBron, i.e., even getting Luka in the first place. They knew that very short term that would create some turbulence without having Anthony Davis's rim protection, just that roster
mm,
depth defensively. But yeah, the thing is, LeBron James, from a good lens, has made this complicated because he's not playing at the best basketball ever of his career, but it's still all-star caliber basketball. And so with that, you still have to operate as if, for both LeBron and Luka, if you have a chance to win a championship with those two players, you got to make those kind of win now moves. But I think the challenging part is making a win now move that might improve them, but doesn't dramatically change their championship fortunes here. And that goes back to the Austin Reaves, the center
mm.
positions, and not just even Austin, but just their roster depth in general. They clearly need to upgrade at center, but the quality of centers and the realistic possibility of getting certain centers, it's very up in the air. And that's what makes the Lakers front office having a very challenging job on their hands this summer.
I will say this. I still feel like you give me the feeling that you're optimistic in the Lakers offseason and what potentially can happen with, some tweaks here and there. And I feel like there's a lot of people that I've talked to or have had conversations with. I feel like there's optimism towards what this summer can be. And we'll see what that means. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. We've also seen the Lakers not be active in the summer, even though you and I probably both believe this. They're left and there's these bare minimums that they have to accomplish in the summer. But I still feel like there's a lot of optimism from people I talk to and even yourself. I mean, yes, it sounds like you think it's going to be challenging, but it feels like you also think being optimistic is the right way to feel.
Yeah, I think relative because I'm just looking at it realistically as far as what they can accomplish and what it actually does. There's not a move that they can make that makes them a championship contender that's realistic. But the thing is, the Lakers still have to be aggressive because even though they're not going to be involved in any Giannis Antetokounmpo or Kevin Durant trade, everything's going to be tied together through a few different things. The dominoes that fall after that. And then if any of those trades or both require a third team to get involved, the Lakers can't be on the sideline here. Now, that might not happen, but that's where their aggressiveness level comes into play with just being in touch with all the different teams and trying to figure out the different possibilities that they can get, some of their priorities set straight with not even just fortifying their center depth, but even maximizing their wing depth. They do have some respectable wings on their team, but in today's NBA, there's no such thing as having too much wing depth.
Okay, a couple NBA questions if you don't mind, and we'll call it a day here. So I appreciate the time, Mark. So looking real quick, let me just get one quick finals prediction. So game 6 tomorrow. You think Thunder wrap it up, whether Tyrese Haliburton plays or not? You think the Oklahoma City Thunder close it up?
I think so. I mean, I think the biggest thing is Tyrese Haliburton's injury. Whether if he plays, he's not going to be the best version of himself. If he doesn't play, obviously that changes the whole complexion of the Pacers' identity because he is the one that
Hmm.
gets them to play at a fast pace. He's the one that gets everyone the ball. But I think the other thing is the Thunder. They've they've started unlocking the best versions of themselves with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander being MVP type Shea, Jalen Williams being a better scorer than sometimes he was showing during last season's playoff push. And then their
Can I
defensive,
stop you
yeah.
for 2 seconds on the Jalen Williams? What's that dude's potential? What's his? Because it's funny when I watch him play. There are times where I'm like, yeah, he's still. Should he take that shot? Should he not? Like he's questioning himself when he's not questioning himself. And by the way, he's so young. It's like you're not expecting him when he's not questioning himself. He's as smooth as an NBA player there is. He's only 24 years old. He has a little bit of a I like taking the big shot type of gene, even though Shea is there. What's this dude's potential?
Well, I think his potential is what you've seen this season, that he could be an all-star player every single season. And I think that that comes down to being that definitive number two that
Mm.
can make shots on or off the ball, helping Shea with ball handling duties, but also being ready to shoot at any given notice for when Shea draws a double team or if Jalen's open. Now, the thing that Jalen's done with both the Thunder's coaching staff and his own trainer is he prepares uh, with different drills moving on and off the ball. So he's ready to be in that attack mode and ready to catch and shoot on any moment's notice. And that's a challenging thing because even though you're preparing to know, okay, you have to be ready to take shots for when your star teammate is covered. You never know exactly when that's going to happen in a game. And oftentimes, Shea is one of many star players that make that decision to
Hmm.
pass at the very last moment. So you have to be ready for that. But he's spent this past offseason training for those kind of things, and I think partly explains why he's been an all-star player to begin with. So the potential is basically replicating this season year to year, and that's very scary to think.
Well, he's got when you get to see young players like that on this stage, that comfortable and that potential, it's like, all right, I'm going to keep an eye out on this guy because we're going to be talking about Jalen Williams for years to come. Best home for Kevin Durant. Best home for KD. Which of all these teams that you've heard being rumored do you say, hey, that would be a really, really good fit?
Well, for a while now, I've said it's the Miami Heat.
Hmm,
Now,
interesting.
the better fit would be more with the Houston Rockets and San Antonio Spurs, but I just have more doubt that even though Kevin Durant is still an all NBA player and very efficient and productive when he's healthy, I don't think that either team is going to think it's worth it to gut even any portion of their young core to get Kevin Durant because of where he's at in his career, the amount of assets you'd have to give up to get him, and his injury history. Where with Miami, um, they have more question marks and less of a ceiling, but because of where they're at, with getting swept by Cleveland in the first round, they might feel more desperate and willing to give
Hmm.
up some of their assets than Houston and San Antonio. And historically, Miami has drawn a line in the sand with not trading Tyler Hero. And I think initially they'll probably have that same idea. Let's see if any combination of Andrew Wiggins and Jaime Jaquez Jr., Duncan Robinson, and a draft pick's enough. But I think because of what happened with Jimmy Butler and that not working out, and the fact that they had a very clear ceiling that they're
Hmm.
really only good for a first round exit that's pretty quick, that they'll make the decision, you know what? Kevin Durant can at least get us further in the playoffs. I think that's what's going to happen.
How much? How open do you think the East is? Just kind of, and we'll see what happens with KD. But does some of that calculus when you hear Toronto wanting to be aggressive, Orlando went and got Desmond Bain. You're talking about Miami maybe making moves. The Pistons, an up and coming squad. Maybe Giannis now it looks like stays in Milwaukee. Is how much is all this being calculated in the sense of teams in the East feel like the East is up in the air?
Yeah, I think that's an important variable. I think the bigger variables is more of just which player you're getting in return, what you're giving up. But no doubt that's part of it. I mean, the Boston Celtics, they're not in the picture anymore because
How crazy is that to say?
Jason Tatum's got an Achilles injury,
Yeah,
and we know how those injuries can affect players' careers, like Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson. Um, and there's just so much up in the air with the Knicks and where they go after firing Tom Thibodeau. And the Pacers, they're a great team, but I suspect that they can run this back, but they're not a prohibitive
hmm,
favorite. They would be one of many contenders. The Cleveland Cavaliers obviously are in that mix, after falling very well short. But that's part of the reason why I think the Bucks have really talked to Giannis about, hey, let's just stay put here, because by them just going with what they have, it might not have been enough these last 3 years with losing in the first round, but the Eastern Conference landscape's much different now. I think with the Bucks, obviously Milwaukee said what they said, Giannis has said what they've said, but regardless of the East landscape, I think that has run its course, because Damian Lillard's going to have issues
sure.
next season with when he comes back. I think for all parties involved, whether it's this summer or before the trade deadline, I think it's going to be this summer. They're going to make the calculation that both short and long term, both parties are better off parting ways.
Hmm.
But in the current moment, that explains why they've been able to say with some conviction, you know what, no one's going to do anything. We're going to stay the course.
I just wonder if Giannis deep, deep down inside would love to try to stay in Milwaukee and keep competing there if it's possible, right? Like if he thinks, can they figure out a path to keep me here? Because he does it feels like obviously Giannis has taken a lot of pride in playing in Milwaukee and probably in a perfect world for him, he could keep having success, but do it in Milwaukee. I just don't know if that's feasible or not.
Yeah, and obviously only Giannis knows that and can answer to that. But just as someone who covers and follows the NBA, just looking at it objectively,
Hmm.
um, it's just hard for me to think that them making some moves around the edges is going to do anything. Not
Sure.
even just next season because of Damian's health, but just long term.
Sure.
And for Giannis, whatever move he makes, he's obviously very entitled to do it. He's earned that right of wanting to stay or wanting to leave. No one should hold that against him. But it just seems like the pathway for him to get back into a championship contention is to get on a team that has a better roster at this point. Obviously, they'll have to give up something to get him, but you know, I think that there is still a middle ground where some teams still can keep a lot of their identity, and then plug Giannis in. All of a sudden, their window is a lot wider.
Well, I got nothing left. I asked you every possible question I can think of for the Lakers and the NBA. Now that was fun. It's funny. A lot of these topics and conversations, I really do genuinely. I'm a fan of the NBA. I know you are obviously as well. I think most of the people on this channel, once Lakers were out, they were still interested in what the playoffs look like, what the finals look like, what the offseason looks like. So it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to these next couple of weeks. I think there should be some good action around the NBA. I appreciate your time. So thank you for coming on the channel. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm sure I'll probably see you soon with something Laker related, or we'll be connecting again as we go through free agency.
Appreciate you, Alan. Always a joy, and I'm sure I'll see you at the Lakers draft headquarters fairly soon.
All right, for everybody else, thank you for being a part of the show today. Thank you for, I know this one, recorded one. We'll be back live tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. So thank you very much for being a part of the show. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day.